I spent about 5 years as the co-leader of the Robin Hood Foundation in New York, and I visited every soup kitchen, every homeless shelter, every program for people with AIDS, and I got very interested in how to help people survive poverty in New York. But in particular, I was interested in how to break the cycle of poverty and how education can play a role in that. And for a while, I was visiting every single after-school program in New York City and kept thinking that after-school programs at their very best were trying to mop up for the messes that were being made in school during the day. So I started visiting all sorts of schools, and more schools than just about anybody I knew. And most of the district public schools that I visited felt to me chaotic and unsafe. And I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. And I visited all these low tuition private schools serving poor kids and felt that those were mission driven and doing a good job for small communities, but they were not sustainable. They were not serving the poorest of the poor. And I walked away from my job and moved to New Jersey and started walking around for a couple of years, just saying out loud, I'm going to start a school. I didn't really know what I was saying or what I was going to do. But that was what I wanted to do, to make a difference in the lives of low-income students. And one day somebody told me, you should call this guy James Verrilli. He's thinking about something very similar. So I went up, I was a freelance writer at the time, and I went up to my garret and called this phone number that had been given to me and said, hello, this is Norman Atkins, I'm looking for James Verrilli. And the voice on the other end of the line said, this is the strangest moment of my entire life. Jamie had been a teacher and a principal at one of these low tuition private schools in the middle of Newark, about a block and a half from the epicenter of the riots. And he had gone to the desk in his school, and on the desk was a telephone and a little piece of paper that had my name and phone number, and he was just about to call me. And when I heard what he was interested in, I made a beeline for his school in Newark and watched him teach, and was one of the greatest teachers that I'd ever seen in my life. He was wearing a big chef's hat, and half the class, these were 8th graders, half the class was making fondue, and half the class was making mixed salad. And they were doing this for about 15 minutes, and he asked them then which was a better metaphor for the early 20th century immigration experience in the United States, the fondue or the mixed salad. And there ensued this very rich conversation which transitioned to students doing AP level document-based questions, and I was smitten, and we went and met at a restaurant in Newark for about 4 hours and realized that we agreed on about 3/4 of the issues in education that we cared about, and that was good enough for me because he had all this rich experience working in a school and I had none, and decided that we were going to work together. He explained to me that charter schools was something that had been started in Minnesota in 1991. This would have been January of '96, and the governor of New Jersey had just signed a law creating charter schools in the state of New Jersey. And we decided to work together and started one of the first charter schools in the state, which opened in September of 1997, North Star Academy. Jamie didn't want to run a school all by himself, and yet had rich experience as a teacher and a leader. And I wanted to figure out how to run the school of his dreams, and to figure out how to make a school that was going to endure for low-income kids. If I doubted my own ability to run a long-distance race, I was confident that he was going to be there for the long haul, and that would be the right thing to do for kids of Newark. I think he wanted to start with 7th graders, and I wanted to start with kindergartners, and we compromised at 5th grade, and he was very clear that Newark was a place where he had been working for a dozen years and wanted to concentrate his efforts there, and introduced me to a dozen or so families, parents and kids who he had worked with over the years, and we put together a team of folks who quickly figured out that downtown Newark was the ideal place to put the school because all public bus lines met downtown, and the parents figured out that North Star Academy would be the right name for the school, adopting the symbol from Frederick Douglass from the newspaper that he had started as an abolitionist during the times of slavery and the Civil War. I realized that Jamie wasn't certified to be the principal of the school, and even though my background was in nonprofit management, that I could use my time and energy to go get certified. So I ran down to Columbia Teachers College and did a very quick master's in educational administration there, and each paper that I wrote for my courses had to do with part of the charter application that we put together for the state. And I also went out and started visiting as many other schools as I could find. One of the big influences was De La Salle Academy, which was a school at the time started by Brother Brian Carty, one of the Christian brothers, on the 4th floor of the Holy Name School at 97th and Amsterdam in the city. And there you could see a manifestation of love in community meetings and the way in which they would stitch together a learning community. Very, very influential. Had a chance to go visit Dave Levin and Kip, which was also signally important in high expectations and what you could do in terms of creating a great school that got results for low-income students, and visited other schools, but those are the ones that I remember the best. So I remember on the first day of school in September, it was probably the day after Labor Day in September of 1997, there must have been 20 reporters. There were TV cameras and photographers and journalists, and people were curious to know what a charter school was going to be. And we felt that this was the R&D arm of public education, and that we really wanted the work that we were doing to help create more opportunities for low-income kids in public schools across Newark and New Jersey and the United States. And so we were really eager to have people come and see what we were doing, and we were also eager to get feedback about how we could be better. So we probably had thousands of visitors in the early years, and people would come to the morning circle and then they would go around and visit classes, and I felt a bit like a tour guide in the early years. But I also benefited from going around and visiting other schools and standing in the back of the school in the classrooms of other people who were doing similar work, and in this way I think we all learned from each other and figured out how to make our schools better and better. You know, the history of public education is about teachers going into classrooms and closing their door and being lonely and private with their students. Principals even aren't routinely visiting classrooms and giving teachers feedback, and I think blowing those doors open was one of the greatest contributions that we were able to make, and creating a learning lab and community within Uncommon Schools and eventually in other charter schools was really helpful in spreading the work that we were doing and the learning that we were able to do in other places. In the early years, we really thought that we could build schools only one grade level at a time. But when you build really strong systems, it gives you more faith that you can start a whole school at one time. And then we were pushed by the superintendent of Newark to do a school turnaround where the adults left and new adults from Uncommon came in, and that was really powerful. I think that Juliana's leadership of that school and applying our systems and culture and best thinking to that school showed us that turning around schools is possible, and has given us more faith to go into communities like Camden to go do that work. I think the next frontier is to partner with district public schools and figure out how to support superintendents in district schools to be able to do similar work within the contours of the regular district school setup.